You won't find it there. Okay. Baha'alotch Haner is some Weimer from Shabbos Pash Baha'alotch Yuta 7 Tavshin Chavdal. Baha'alotch Haner is when you will kindle the candles of the menorah, which literally means when you will raise up the candles. In the mashakos of neris, the fact that it says neris in the plural, simply put, why does it say plural? Could have said but since we're talking about 7 candles, menorah had in its 7 branches, so therefore that's why we say neris in the plural. But the Rebbe comes over here with another explanation of neris in the plural, based on the spiritual concept of what the menorah is. That when it says neris in the plural, it hints on 2 types of candles. One of the candles is what it says, that the candle of Hashem is the soul of a person. Meaning, simply put, one candle of the plural candles of here is talking about the person, about the Yid. And the second one, which makes up the plurality of neris, Mashakos is what it says, because you, Hashem, are my candle. So that's a second level, that's a different level of candle, that the Eibishter is called our candle. Chazal say, Hashem told people, Neiri biyadcha, v'neircha biyadi, that my candle is in your hands. Meaning, what is my candle? The candle of that's the Eibishter's candle. V'neircha biyadi, your candle is in my hand. In other words, Hashem has control of our neshama, so then we have kaviyachol control about the neir of Avaya. And Hashem says that if you will be meshamer neiri, if you'll be meshamer, if you will guard my things, and specifically the neir of Hashem, the Chazal say is like the Medrash says that it's going on neir mitzvah v'Torah. So you keep the Torah and the mitzvahs, which is Hashem's candle. So then the Eibishter says, I will keep your candle. I will protect your being. I will protect the Neir Havai Nishmas Adam. So Balzed Nemar, concerning this, it says, when you will raise up the neiris, when you will kindle the neiris, it's referring to the 2 candles. Neir Havai Nishmas Adam, Kiyata Neir Havai, it's talking about Hashem's candle and the person's candle. In both of them, in the person's neshama and Hashem's candle, there also has to be the person's service. That's why it says Shazawin, that's why it says in the plural, when you will raise up my candles. When you'll raise up the candles. In other words, a Yid, you the Yid, have the job of raising up and elevating the candles, both of these candles, both the Neir Havai Nishmas Adam and also the Neir which is Hashem. This will be understood by prefacing what's explained in Torah Or, the Maimer entitled Rani V'Simchi Basir. Over there, that Maimer is in Parshas Miketz, because it's Miketz usually comes out on Chanukah, and Rani V'Simchi Basir is the Haftorah of Chanukah. He says, it's also who has cholas haftorahs the parshas v'alois. It's also this pasuk. Not only is it the haftorah of Shabbos Chanukah, but it's also the haftorah at the beginning of the haftorah of parshas v'alois. Yeshnam kama v'kama mamorim ashoyachim leparshas v'alois shmaskim lepasuk zeh. And there's many mamorim that are connected to parshas v'alois that begin with the pasuk Rani v'Simchi. So like the Rebbe like contrasting, even though I am quoting from Maimer and Torah Or, which is Parshas Miketz, that in connection with Chanukah, but it's the same theme because it's the same Haftorah. that we have Mamorim on the Rani V'Simchi on Shabbos Chanukah, and then the same topic we have Mamorim on parts of Baha'u'llah. So it says over there, but beer at Tam Knesset Yisrael in the Kras B'Shem Ba'as, and explaining the reason that Klal Yisrael is called a daughter. The Yisrael Medrash, it's brought down in Medrash, Mashal Melech Shoisloi Baskul. This is analogous to a king that had a daughter, and he did not hold himself back. He did not stop from showing his love for his daughter till he called her my daughter. Did not stop from showing his love till he called her my mother. In other words, we find that in the psukim, we find that it's different terms used for the Yidden. Yidden are called, it says, son of a ren of benois tzioin. Let's learn this Maimer Chazal, because we've had this actual Maimer Chazal often referred to in the Maimer. We never saw this inside. So let's look on the left side, on the left column of the commentary, line 46. So he says, "V'zel l'shoin hamedrash ala kasav tzena v'rena b'noi sia in b'mel shloima b'atar shitlayim." This is what the Medrash says on the pasuk that says, "Go out and see daughters of Tzia and the king Shloima, and with his crown that his mother crowned him with." Rabbi Yitzchak. So Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Chazarti b'chol mikra." I searched throughout the entire written Torah, throughout the entire Torah Shabbat. I did not find anywhere that Bathsheba, Shlomo Melech's mother, made him a crown. So therefore, he's trying to figure out what does it mean that that the mother of Shlomo Melech made him a crown. So that should be asked Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Yossi. He wanted to know if Rabbi Yossi said anything about what's the meaning of this phrase, the crown that your mother made a crown from. Amar loy hey. So Rabbi Lazar said, yes, I did hear from my father's son. Mashal Melech, this is a metaphor for a king. He had an only daughter. He would love her over the top. He used to call her my daughter. He did not stop showing love for her until he called her my sister. Until he called her my mother. So to Hashem initially called the Yidden daughter. As it says, it says, listen, daughter, and see, and turn your ear to me, and forget your nation and your father's house. In other words, come to me instead of whatever you've been following before. So we see one pasuk where the Yidden are called daughter. Did not stop from showing his love for the Yidden until he called them my sister. Remember, as it says, Bischili, Achois, Yereosi, Yernosi, Tamosi. Shorosh in the Molish, Tal, Kavatisar, Lila. The whole pasuk over there where the Yidden are called sister. Open up, my sister, my beloved, my dove, my whole one, that my head is filled with dew, and its edges are the coverings of night. Did not stop from showing love until he called the Jewish people mother. Listen to me, my nation and my people. Pay attention to me. Torah will come out from him. And my law is for the light of the nations. I will calm them down. I will make them settle. Amad Rabbi Shimon B'Yochai, Noshka Roshis, Rabbi Shimon B'Yochai arose and kissed Rabbi Lazar on his head for explaining this. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking that Umi maybe is written without above, and that's why they read it according to the Ksiv, which is Imi. Be that as it may, so that's how they explain what it says. Imai is talking about Klal Yisrael is called the mother. And Hashem calls Melech Shloim is a mashal on Hashem, and he's calling the mother of Hashem. The phrase "mother" is a term of endearment. So, in other words, in short, back to the text, there are different terms of endearment that Hashem calls the Eden. He calls my daughter, he calls my sister, and he even calls my mother, as we mentioned in other times, that like in Europe or whatever, in Yiddish and even in other languages in Europe, they would address a child, a cute little child, whatever, motherl, mutterl. Mother is another term of endearment. Okay, so in Chassidus, we always speak about biti versus imi is in a very practical sense. Bas, mother, receives from the parents. The mother, on the other hand, is the giver. So in other words, there's the way Yidden are called a bas, biti, they're called a mekabel from Hashem, as we will explain, versus there's Yidden the way they're called imi, the mashpia to Hashem, as we will explain. So he says in line 21, Magdim, and he prefaces, we need to understand what it says, that the candle of Avai is a person's neshama, hainu shaneshama kruya neir shel shem Avai, that the neshama is called the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. It says, it doesn't say that the neshama of a person is a neir, but it says that the neshama of the person is a neir of Yud Kei Vav Kei. And other, sometimes it says the pasuk, because you are my candle, Havayim, that Hashem is called the candle of the Yidden. So which is it? Are we the candle of Hashem, or is Hashem our candle? In other words, again, Mashpia Mekabel. Is he illuminating us? Is Hashem the one that's shining his light on us? Or are we shining a light on Hashem? So he says, we could say that these two matters. That you are my candle, Havayim, and the candle of Havayim is the soul of a person. Top of the next page. These correspond to the above two things that we mentioned about either Klal Yisrael is called a term of endearment of my daughter by Hashem, or the Klal Yisrael is called by a term of endearment of being my mother. Hainu, this means as follows. What it says that you are my candle Avayim. That Hashem is called a candle that he shines and illuminates to the Yidden. So then this is in such a way that the Yidden are considered the receivers. That's the idea that the Yidden are my daughter. Like I mentioned before, that a daughter indicates a receiver. What it says in the pasuk that a person, a Yid, a neshama, is Hashem's candle. In other words, hey, they are illuminating Hashem. That the neshamas of Yidden are a candle that illuminates Hashem. In such a way that the neshamas is in a way that they are being mashpia. That's the idea of my mother, meaning that the Yidden are mashpia to Hashem. Any questions? Okay, we're holding Eis Gimel, page Vav, line 10. Mamsh bar Maimer, the Maimer, the Alter of Torah Oyer, Pars Miketz continues. Inyan Yuvon, this matter will be understood by Hagdim, Inyan Mashakosel, by first prefacing where it says, Koil HaNeshama, or Kol HaNeshama, to Halal Yudke. Every Neshama will praise Yudke. Mois Vatsamach Tzedek Ba'agam, in the Samach Tzedek, in his notes on the Mamorim, he adds, Shemash Higdim Rabbeinu Zalba Pof, Koil HaNeshama, the fact that the Alter Rebbe has to add in the Pasuk, what he has to preface this topic in the mind with Koil HaNeshama, Mepnei she'aliyas hamalchus hi bebchinas imi v'chinas bin, because the ascent of Malchus is up to the level of my mother, the level of Bina. In other words, as follows. It says, Koil Neshama. It doesn't say Neshama Tahalakah. So the Koil Neshama comes to tell you that every type of level of Neshama goes up and is illuminated and it rises up higher. Malchus is the level of Neshama. Malchus, also Bina is the level of Neshama. And Bina, we also know, is the level of mother. Like we know in the beginning of Tanya, Chachma and Bina is Abba Ve'ima, father and mother. And there's in Malchus. So when we talk about that Aliyas HaMalchus, that there are certain times when Malchus goes up, which is called Eimatator, it's the lower level Hey of Yud Kei Vav Kei. So it goes up to like its source, which is the higher level of mother, Hey Me'ilah, and to the higher level of the Hey of Yud Kei Vav Kei. So it's going up from its level to the level of Imi, the level of Bina. Then the Rebbe adds, Nishmas Shin, and also the Neshama Gam Kim B'chinas Bina. The level of Neshama, as we know, we speak about Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. Nefesh usually refers to Malchus. Ruach has to do with the Midas. Neshama has to do with Bina. Igam Kim B'chinas Bina, like it says in the pasuk, Nishmas Shin Dal Yud to be named, that the Neshama of Hashem gives them understanding. So we see that the level of Neshama has to do with Bina. Lachein Higdim pasuk zeh. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe prefaced this pasuk because with this pasuk you could get it's also associated with this particular topic that says Kol Neshama Tahalakah, because the level having to do with the level of mother, which we spoke about before, the level of the Neir Havai Nishmas Adam, that the person illuminates Shem Havai, and therefore he's called mother, and this is also has to do with the level of Bina having to do with mother. And the Alter Rebbe explains that the Halal who Maloshin Behiloi Neiroi Al Rosh. The word Halal, usually the meaning of the word Halal is from the word praise. Chassidus often brings down Pasuk, says it in Iyuv, I believe, that Hiloi could also mean shine, revelation, illumination. When his candle shines and illuminates on my head, that it's an expression of a ray and a revelation. What does it mean? In other words, it's indicative of something that's very limited. It's only a ray. It's not the essence. The koy is referring to the coming into being of all the worlds, that it's only from a ray of Hashem. Be able to be a level of a ray before you can even have the ray. How do we get from the infinite to only a finite, limited ray that's necessary to create the world? So prior to that, it has to be prefaced by the tzimtzum, by the constriction of Hashem's light. This is what it says in the pasuk, showing on this idea that before there could be the ray that brings the worlds into being, there first has to be a tzimtzum. This is indicated in the pasuk, that with the ka of Hashem, He formed worlds. Meaning, and the Chacham said, B'yud, what's the world? It says plural worlds. What does it mean, plural? Yud nivra el maba. It says ka, shem yud ke. So the yud was with which Olam Haba was created. Meaning, so they should be able to be the coming into the being of the world to come. That's through the letter yud. That's a level of constriction. So how do we follow that up with the letter Hey? Despite the fact that it starts off with a level of tzimtzum, this world was created with the letter Hey, which Hey shows on the lack of tzimtzum. Hey is just the opposite than the Yud. The Yud is tiny, it's a small little letter. It shows that it's constricted. The Hey shows that it's expansive. It has breadth, it has width, it has length. There's all the three types of measurements to it, or if it doesn't have the depth, at least it has length, it has width. So why is that necessary? If the Olam Haba was enough with the letter Yud, so he says in line 26, Ki ilu hoysam gam brias olam hazai de Yud, if the creation of also this world would have been through the letter Yud, haya hachayis mitzumtzum yoiser medai, then the life force and vitality would have been too constricted. And then it would have been possible that the external ones, the clippers, should be able to receive their chayas, they should be able to nurse and receive excess and extra chayas from clippers. Like it's known that one of the ways how clippers receives its chayas is when there's an unusual amount of constrictions, when there's too much limitations and too many tzimtzumim. So then, when there's too many tzimtzumim, too many constrictions, so then clippers can receive the chayas from the Eibishter. And that is why you couldn't have a yud create Olam Haba, and then another yud following that create Olam Hazeh, because then it would have been a tzimtzum following a tzimtzum. And if there had been so many tzimtzumim following each other, so then clippers would have had a field day. So he's going to bring a few examples and contrasts of where we see that some tzimtzumim are actually very positive, like in the yud with which Olam Haba was created. But some excess tzimtzumim are a negative, are something that has to be avoided. So he says in line 29, like we find concerning the general idea of hair. Hair throughout Chassidus and Kabbalah is explained that shows like a very minuscule type of life force, and a very constricted type of life force and energy. Sometimes we find that Cyrus hair is a very positive thing and a good thing and a holy thing. And sometimes we find just the opposite. So last line on the page, by a nazir, the level of hairs is a matter of holiness. Like it says, he will be holy. He will let his hair grow loose and grow wild. In other words, that it's something that shows unholiness. As opposed to the Levim, it says, at least when they were in the Midbar, it says, "V'haviru sar al kolb saram." They will remove, they will pass over a razor over their entire flesh. They have to be entirely bald. So that's one of the problems that happened over there. That Korach came home and his wife told him, "What are you doing? Your Moshe Rabbeinu is making fun of you. He's making you shave all your hair." It's like one of the things they were goading him and teasing him with to get his fight against Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Levium's lack of hair was in contrast to the Kohanim. Not like by the Kohanim, and especially by the Kohen Gadol. It is Shasidus, Heinam Shachsal Yonas, that the hairs are a very great and elevated type of Amshacha, Chulu, etc. Similar to this by a woman. Chazal say Seir Bisha, but that hair by a woman is considered nakedness. V'hainu lefi she'inyan hasayra moira al hamshachem mitzumtzemes b'yoyis. It indicates on a very constricted type of amshachem, very constricted amount of life force and energy. For example, a hair, though it comes into it, life force and vitality from the brain, like the rest of the body, that's indicated. How do we know that there's any life force in it? Maybe the hair is something dead, but we know that since the hair grows, that means it's alive, and the life force comes ultimately from the brain. But still in all, what amount and what type of life force comes down? So it comes down. This is a very constricted type of life force. To such a degree, that when you cut the hair, the brain will not hurt. In other words, we're not aware of any pain. The loikim may be body aguf sheyesh b'hem dibur chayis, not like the limbs and organs of the body, that if there's any type of cut in them, because there's a lot of life force and energy over there from the brain, so then the brain feels the pain. But in here, it's so constricted, they doesn't even feel any pain. So now that I've explained, this is the reason why there's holiness associated with the hairs, like we find by the Nazir, or even like we said, by the Kohen Gadol as well. It says, therefore, the idea of holiness is connected to the level of hairs, specifically the level of hairs, shows on the idea of holiness. Since it is holy and separated, it's impossible for it to be amshacha only through the level of hairs, because we're talking about such a high level. So when you want to have some of that kedusha, the only way you could bring kedusha down from a very high level, from a level that's higher than say the Rishtalshlut, which is the level of the Nazir. Therefore, that the hair of his head, it's brought down concerning higher levels higher than Atzilus, in the image of Daniel, it says over there, the hair of his head is like white wool. The whiteness shows on the purity and the elevated stature. So that is the way it's all in the spiritual realms. And that's reflected in the Nazir and the Kohen Gadol. And in a similar vein, also the hairs of the beard have in it a holiness, and is an indication of holiness, and a means from Shach Sachayis, etc. But down here below, just like we said with the letter Yudke, that the Yud, with the name Yudke, that the letter Yud is Shayach to the level of Olam Haba, because we're dealing with a very high level, so then it could be a great revelation. But when we're dealing with Olam Hazeh, we're going to have a Yud down here, it's going to be too strong. But down here, if the Hamshacha will come down through hairs, that idea that hair by a woman is considered nakedness. Because a woman, that indicates a level of life force and vitality that's enclosed in the world. That's the level of the feminine, the level having to do with Malchus and Shechina. In other words, it's already constricted, it's already limited. And if it would come down from there, from the level of Nuk, from the limited life force, and you put another Tzimtzum on top of it, in the way of constriction through siders, in a because the many constrictions, so then there could be the external ones will nurse from it. So that's the reason why the hair of a woman has to be covered and concealed, because the hair is something that is a negative, it's a tzimtzum on top of a tzimtzum which clippers can take from. By came Levim, and so too by Levim. Because Levi is the level of Buddha, Kohen is Chesed, so because he's Chesed, by him the hairs, which is a constriction of that Chesed, is good. But Levi is the level of Buddha, Yisrael's level of the Feres, so therefore, when it comes down from Amdashpa, through the hairs and constrictions, then will be that the external ones, the clippers, will nurse from it. Therefore, it says by them that they will pass a razor over their entire flesh. And here he connects it back to what we spoke about earlier. This is also the reason why this world was created with the letter Hey, and not with the letter Yud. So it shouldn't be a great symptom, because then the external ones will nurse. We'll stop over here. Any questions before we break for the day?
When they say neshama, do they mean in the soul in general, or like nefesh, ruach, and neshama